Hi there, and welcome to the Salted Pepper, where we cook for real life using real food and we keep it real simple. And today we are gonna make the most delicious pot roast right in the Ninja Foodi. And this one is really quick and super easy to do. And it's kind of a funny story because my husband brought home a pot roast the other night for Tasty Tuesday, where I cook live in a Facebook group. And you should have seen my eyes because it's an hour-long show. And I was like, how am I ever gonna get a pot roast done in under an hour? So I had to make some modifications, and definitely stick around so you can see how I get this pot roast. It's a 3-pound chuck roast done in 30 minutes of pressure cooking time. All right, so the first thing we want to do here is get the Ninja Foodi turned on to sear saute on high. Make sure you push the start button. I'm famous for forgetting that. And then you want to add in some sort of an oil. Now you could use olive oil, you could use any kind of oil that you like, canola, vegetable, whatever. I'm going to use some bacon grease because my husband made some thick cut bacon this morning, and there's about a 1/4 cup of bacon grease, and I think that's just going to add some extra flavor. But totally optional because I have made this recipe several times with just olive oil and it works out beautifully. All right, so I'm just going to put that in and let that start getting heated up. Perfect. And then what we need to do is get our chuck roast cut up so that it cooks in 30 minutes. And you might be saying, oh no, I don't want to cut my pot roast up. And you don't have to if you want to go a long, 90-minute to 2-hour pressure cook time. You can still follow this recipe, but you might want to add your vegetables in a little bit later because they're going to overcook in that period of time. So I wanted this to be a one-pot, set it and forget it kind of meal. And in order to do that, we have to manage the size of our chuck roast. So this is a 3-pound chuck roast, and I'm just going to pull it right up here. What I'm going to do is cut it into 4-inch chunks. And trust me, this makes no difference when you go to eat it, because what do you do with a pot roast when you're ready to eat it? You pull it apart. You want it to be tender and melt in your mouth, delicious, and this will do that for you. So that's the first thing I'm going to do is take my knife and cut it into about 4-inch pieces. Don't worry about trimming it up or anything like that, because that will take care of itself under the pressure cook time. All right. Now, if I find something like this, I might just trim that off and not put it in. But I'm not going to worry about going through the whole meat and trimming everything off. All right, so we've got 2 there. You want to make them about the same size, and this will work for whatever size chuck roast you have. So if you have a 4-pound or a 5-pound, you can just go ahead and make the 4-inch chunks, however many you can get out of there. And if you have a bigger pot or a smaller pot roast, you could do the same thing. So this will work with any size pot roast, just 4-inch chunks or thereabout. I'm not being exact. All right, that looks good. Well, this one might be a little bit bigger, but I think it's going to be fine. All right, so we've got our meat cut up, and I'm going to really quick wash my hands. Then we're going to get our flour and our seasoning blend, and then we'll get to searing the meat in the Ninja Foodi. All right, so let me grab the flour. This is a 1/2 cup of all-purpose flour, and then I have my spice blend here. What I have is 2 teaspoons of sea salt, fine grind, 1 teaspoon of black pepper, 1 teaspoon of crushed rosemary, that's dried, 1 teaspoon of basil, 1 teaspoon of onion powder, 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, and 1/2 teaspoon of red pepper flakes. And don't worry about those red pepper flakes. They are not going to add any spiciness to this dish, but they do add a ton of flavor. And that might seem like a lot of spices, but you really want to season your meat very well when you're making a pot roast. And I also use all dried seasonings when I'm going to sear meat, because fresh seasonings tend to burn pretty easily. So I'm just going to mix this up. The oil has heated up really nicely. I can actually smell the bacon grease, so I think we're ready to go. You do want a super hot pot when you go to sear meat. So you want to make sure that it is extremely hot in there, and I think it's going to be. So what I'm going to do is take the beef, each chunk, and sort of just toss them in this flour. Just sort of toss it around like that. and get all sides coated. Now this step takes a little bit of time, but I really do urge you to do it because it will give you a very good end product for your pot roast. All right, so let's get this guy in and hopefully he sizzles. And he did. And I'm putting him around the edge because that's how the pot is designed. It's a little convex, so the bacon grease or whatever oil you're using goes to the outside. So I'm putting the meat on the outside so it comes in direct contact with that fat that we put in there. All right. Now, when you're picking out a cut of meat for a pot roast, I really recommend getting a chuck roast. That is going to give you the best end result. It's very flavorful. It should be marbled, and it cooks really nicely under pressure because of the added fat. If you get a leaner cut, like let's say a top round or something like that, you're just not going to have the same results. You can do it, of course, but the results just aren't going to be the same. All right, I think I can get one more in here. I could probably get another one, but I'm gonna go ahead and wait to do the other two until I start to flip these around and bring two of them out. And that's just so I don't overcrowd the pan, cool down the pot too much, and then not get that sear that we're looking for. So the first one I put in, I can go ahead and turn to the other side, and you are gonna go on all sides of this meat to sear, even the edges, every bit of it, you want to sear it. Oh, it smells good already. All right, so I'm gonna leave those alone for a few minutes, then I'm just gonna finish up with the rest of these, get them on the plate, and then we're gonna deglaze the pot and finish loading up all of our vegetables and go under pressure. All right, spectacular. So that took me about 10 minutes to do all of those chunks, and it's so worth taking the time to do that. You will be so pleased with the final outcome of your pot roast. All right, so now I'm gonna turn this off just so I don't burn up what's in there, and I'm gonna deglaze the pan. This is very important when you saute anything that you're gonna then go under pressure, because there could be brown bits in there. And so you want to make sure that they come off. So what I'm going to deglaze with is 1 cup of dry red wine. This is a Cabernet, but you can use any red wine that's dry. I needed to get that in there pretty quick before it burns, so sorry. That's pretty cool. It's also burning off the alcohol, so don't worry about that. So 1 cup, and any drinking wine that you like, you can go ahead and put in there. Now, if you don't want to add in wine, you don't have to, of course. You can use 3 to 4 cups of beef stock instead. I'm gonna add in 2 cups of beef stock. Now, I've tested the recipe with 4 cups total of liquid, and it was way too much. There was so much liquid at the end, way too much to even make gravy with. So then I cut it down to 3 cups, and today I'm always pushing the limit here. I want to see if I can get it done with 2 cups. Well, total of 3 cups. 2 cups of beef stock and 1 cup of that wine. So let me recap because that was a little confusing. The first time I tested the recipe, I used a total of 5 cups. 4 cups of beef stock, 1 cup of wine. Way too much liquid. Then the second time I tested it, I did 3 cups of beef stock and 1 cup of wine. And it was really good, but I still think it was a little too much. So now I'm even taking it down 1 more cup. And I think we're gonna be fine. The reason why we want so much liquid in this pot is because we need to cook in 30 minutes. We wanna get our beef in there. It's gonna sit in the liquid. That's gonna cook it faster, render that fat, and make it really tender in a shorter period of time. So that's why I want to have enough liquid to do that, but not so much that we have so much left over that we don't know what to do with. But you can always err on the side of caution, and you can definitely add in more liquid. It does not affect the outcome, except you are left with a whole lot of broth at the end, which may be great. I just found it too much to make gravy. I mean, I had containers and containers of gravy that I would never use up. So I want to decrease this a little bit. All right, so there we go. Now we can turn the Ninja Foodi back on, which I recommend doing because you want to keep that hot so that we go under pressure just a little bit quicker, because this is going to be a full pot. We are going to maximize this space. It's going to be filled to the brim. So let me just really quick clean up here. Then we'll get to cutting our onions and getting our mushrooms ready and get everything in the pot and go under pressure. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is get the meat back into the pot. And I'm just going to go ahead and set it in there. I wish you could smell this because it smells so good already. All right, perfect. Now we don't want any of that to go to waste either. That's good stuff there. All right. Perfect. All right, so now what I'm gonna do is get the onion in. So let me just move this over here. And what I have is 2 Vidalia onions. Now you could use a yellow onion or even a red onion, any kind of onion you like, or omit the onions. You know, you don't have to use onions if you don't want to, but they do add a nice flavor. Because I want to leave all the vegetables in big chunks, what I'm gonna do is cut the onion in half from the root end to the stem end. And then I'm gonna flip it over, because remember, you always wanna cut on a flat surface of the vegetable. And I'm gonna just take off the root end, take off the stem end, and peel the paper off here. So I'm gonna peel, sometimes I'll peel the first layer. This one actually, yep, came off perfectly. And then all I'm gonna do is just cut them in half and throw them in. So the prep for this is pretty easy. Now, if you didn't want big chunks of onion, but you wanted the flavor, you could certainly cut them up smaller and they will kind of fade away into your dish. But I like the onions, so I'm gonna keep them just like this. I love a good pot roast. And believe it or not, it's something that has always given me trouble. I just can't get it flavorful enough. And so I was super excited when I made this dish for Tasty Tuesday, and it turned out perfect. I mean, perfect. It was the best pot roast I've ever made, and honestly, the best pot roast I've ever tasted. Now, if you want a little spin on a pot roast, I have a recipe for a Mexican pot roast that is absolutely delicious. It takes about 45 minutes because we cook rice and beans at the same time. And I will link to that recipe up there because it is really, really tasty. All right, so the next thing I want to do is add in my garlic. And what I did with the garlic, this is 1 bulb of garlic. It's about 10 to 15 cloves of garlic. And the only thing I did was remove the paper and smash them with my knife. So I didn't, I'm not cutting them up or anything. They can stay whole and they're going right in the pot. The next thing I'm gonna add is some fresh rosemary and thyme. So this is about 4 to 5 sprigs of thyme and, maybe 3 sprigs of rosemary. Just gonna go right there on top, and 2 bay leaves. Gonna put those in. Now we wanna get our mushrooms in. Now, the way to clean mushrooms properly is you can remove the stem, or if you like the stem, you can leave it on, but I would usually remove it. And then just with a lightly damp cloth, you just brush off any of the dirt that's on there. If you wash your mushrooms under water or soak them, they're like a sponge and they will absorb that water. And then guess what? They can't absorb the sauce that you're cooking them in. So we want them to get all of the flavor from the pot roast and the broth and the wine, and they will be absolutely delicious, but don't rinse them, just wipe them off. These are pretty clean. And these are baby portobellos, but you don't have to use baby portobellos. You can use white button mushrooms as well, any kind of mushrooms that you like. Whoops, that one fell apart. No biggie. Now, when I first started cooking with the Ninja Foodi, I kind of had this preconceived notion about mushrooms. I thought, you know, they're full of like liquid. They're going to give off all of their liquid, right? They're going to become nothing. Well, actually, it's the opposite. They are sponges, and so under pressure, they absorb a ton of liquid. So they stay nice and plump and so flavorful. So I really encourage you to pressure cook with mushrooms. It's delicious. All right. We are gonna have a full pot here. I hope I can get all those potatoes and everything in. Now, if you have the 8-quart, you can use that. No problems. That will work out fine. This is the 6.5-quart, so I'm gonna push the limits, but I think we can manage. I think we'll be fine. And in the worst case scenarios, if I couldn't fit it in, I could cut those chunks of beef up a little bit smaller and kind of get a little bit more in the pot. But I think we'll be fine. All right, perfect. All right, so now we're gonna get in our carrots and our potatoes. Now, I peeled the carrots, but I leave them as whole as you possibly can. So as long as they fit in the pot, keep them whole. And I try to pick like larger diameter carrots. If they're really tiny, they're gonna overcook. So I try to pick some nice big carrots there for a pot roast. So I'm just gonna lay these in. Push down too, that's perfectly fine. You can push down. I forgot to hit the start button, oh no. Oh well. It's gonna take my pot a little bit longer to come up to pressure because it hasn't been heating up like I wanted. But just remember to push your start button and your pot will be hot and it'll come to pressure a little bit quicker. I do that all the time. It's crazy. Okay. Now I'm just gonna push that down. Now I've got 2 pounds of Yukon Gold potatoes. I really recommend using Yukon Gold instead of russet because of the way that they will cook with your pot roast. Russets will tend to become softer and fall apart a little bit more, and the Yukon Gold really hold their shape. And I'm not peeling them. They are washed though. I'm not peeling them and I'm not even gonna cut them, and I'm just gonna lay them in here and hope I can get them all in, which I think I can. When you are going above the lip of the pot a little bit and going under pressure, you can do that. Just keep everything towards the front of the pot. Don't impede the back part where the pressure valve is. So that looks good. All right. I think that's it, guys. And now we go under pressure for 30 minutes. So I'm going to put the pressure lid on. Turn your valve to seal. High pressure. Time is going to be 30 minutes. Can you believe this? We're going to pressure cook pot roast in 30 minutes. That's awesome. All right, so now I expect this to take a good 15 minutes to come up to pressure, especially since I didn't have the pot turned on. Silly me, and so it's gonna have to heat up all that liquid. If you had your pot on the sear saute on high and your liquid was already hot, it's gonna come up to pressure a little bit quicker. Now, after the 30 minutes of pressure cooking time, I am gonna allow it to natural release, but not because of the reason you may think. It's not because I'm worried about the meat drying out. I'm not. The meat is submerged in liquid, and by the time the 30 minutes is up, the juices from the meat will actually have it completely submerged. So I'm not worried about that. What I am worried about though is if I flip that switch too soon and vent, that I'm gonna have some beef broth and stuff kind of spewing out because it's going to be a really full pot, and I had that happen the first time. So I'm gonna go and let it natural release for about 5 to 10 minutes, and that's about it. And then we'll do an immediate release and we'll get to taste in this delicious pot roast. So we're just finishing up the natural release, and I just want to talk about how long it took to come up to pressure. So it took a good 20 minutes, I think, to come up to pressure. So you can cut that time down, make sure you hit that start button when you're on the sear saute with the liquid in the bottom. After the 30-minute pressure cook time, then it counts up 5 minutes, and that's the natural release period. And then I went ahead and immediately released the rest of the pressure, or manually released the rest of the pressure, I should say. And you can see it's taken a good 5 minutes. It's still just finishing up here, but within about another minute or so, the red button will depress and we'll be able to open our lid. Of course, always make sure you do that away from you because there is still a lot of steam built up, and I don't want anyone to get burned. All right, so the button just depressed, and I'm gonna give it another, maybe a minute before I open the lid. And the reason why is because when I was testing this recipe, I had an issue that as soon as the red button depressed, I opened up the lid fairly quickly. There was still a lot of steam built up there, and the lid started kind of lifting up on its own, and I don't wanna get splattered by anything. So I'm just gonna give it another minute. I don't usually do that, but this is a super full pot, so I just wanna kind of wait and make sure that everything works out safely for us, right? All right, so there we go, perfect. All right, look at that. Now you can see the potatoes on top, the liquid is all the way up to the top. That's why I decreased to 2 cups. So I'm actually thinking we could probably decrease to 1 cup of broth and 1 cup of wine. So if you give that a try, let me know and I can add that into the comments or add that into the recipe. All right, so let's pull these out. Now, some of them have split, but most of them are still whole. They look so good. And if they split in half, that's fine because I would ordinarily cut them into serving size pieces anyway before putting them on the table to serve. Because most of the time people will only take either a quarter or a half of a potato. All right, let's get these carrots out. That one's gonna break in half, that's okay. They look good though. They look really good. The smell in here is amazing. I mean, it smells so good. So I'm putting it on a nice size platter here. And then we're gonna see if we can make some gravy. That'll be cool. We have to get all the way down until we get to the meat, right? The meat's all the way on the bottom. And that's the way you want it. Now this carrot, the carrots that are kind of further down are just falling apart a little bit more, but they still seem like they're gonna be fine, not overcooked. Now, if you liked your carrots a little bit more on the al dente side, then I would put this under pressure for 15 to 20 minutes and then add in your carrots. And then go the rest of the 10 minutes. Looks good though, I'm excited. Oops, I don't have a place for that. There we go. All right, so let's get some of these mushrooms out. Look at that. And they hold their shape so nicely. It's exciting. All right, now let's get our meat. Okay, so the meat is breaking up beautifully. Look at that. Perfect. I think for the rest of it, I'm going to go ahead and switch over to another utensil because it's going to take me forever to get this out using tongs. So let me just grab that other tool. It's called the scoop and drain. And it's great when you're dealing with a whole bunch of things, small pieces in a big pot like this. So we can get out all of the meat and all of the onions. Wow. All these little stems left from the thyme you can just take out and put to the side. You also want to make sure that you find your bay leaf and get that out. You don't want anyone to eat the bay leaf. It's great for seasoning, but you don't want anyone to eat it. I could have done a better job at presentation, but oh well. Now, because I'm gonna make some gravy in here, I'm trying to get out all the little pieces. I don't like a chunky gravy. I like mine to be really smooth. So I wanna try to make sure I get out all of, even the little pieces of garlic. All right, I think that's good. I'll strain it again. So I think that's gonna be good. I think that'll be fine. All right, so I'm just gonna set this platter down in front of me here. There we go, it's pretty heavy. All right, perfect. Now, that seasoning that I had left over is what I'm gonna use to make the gravy. But if you didn't wanna do that, you don't have to. You can just use some flour, salt, and pepper, and whatever other seasonings that you want to make, that you wanna put in there. All right, so what I'm looking for is to see how much glistening do we have. When we have glistening on the top, that means that we have fat available that will absorb the flour. And in order to do this, the best way is I do 1 tablespoon at a time, and I also put it through the fine sieve strainer. And I'm just gonna sprinkle this over the top and let it absorb. And as a matter of fact, we can probably turn the Ninja Foodi on the high sear saute while we do this. All right, well, I washed this bowl. There's a little bit of water in there. That's not gonna hurt anything. But I wanted to save the seasonings because they're not gonna go through the strainer, but I do want to save them because we might wanna add them back in to flavor our gravy. And I'm just gonna let that sit there. And the reason why I like to sift the flour in is it reduces the amount of clumps that you'll get. So once it has about a minute to absorb, the flour absorbs the fat, then we can start that process again. But I'm gonna go ahead and turn this on, like I said earlier, and keep going here, 1 tablespoon at a time. You don't want to put too much flour in. If you do, you're going to end up with kind of a floury tasting gravy. You have to have that fat available. So there's some flour sitting on top of the pot here, and I'm just waiting until I can no longer see it, and then I'll whisk it in. All right, so I have a confession to make. I don't make very good gravy, apparently. Anyway, what happened was I got impatient and I stirred in the flour before it had absorbed the fat, and guess what happened? I have lumps now. But because this is usually what I end up doing, because I'm an impatient person and I want it to hurry up and get done, I'm used to having lumps in my gravy. And in fact, I don't make gravy very often. I'm not a huge fan of it, actually. But when I have a pot roast, it's sometimes nice to have a little gravy. So since I am so used to having lumps in my gravy, I know that all you have to do is strain it out. So I'm just gonna take this here and get a little spoon. This is not the right utensil. It's gonna take me forever, but anyway, we're gonna go with it. And I'm just gonna strain out enough gravy for me to stir, and then I'll throw out this. And I'll give it a taste and see if we need to add back in some of those seasonings. But I think it's gonna be fine. All right, let's give it a taste right now and see. I'm just gonna put this in. Oh, it's a good consistency. So I kind of like it. And it will thicken up as it cools too. Oh, it's good. It's perfect. It does not need any seasonings whatsoever. Oh my gosh, that is perfect. And my husband was just kind enough to bring me the correct utensil so I can go a little bit faster with this. Now this makes probably about 3 or 4 cups of gravy, so it's quite a bit here. So you would definitely have leftover, or if you have leftover pot roast, use your gravy and make a beef stew out of the leftover pot roast and vegetables. I do that a lot. It's delicious. But it looks good. It tastes even better. Perfect. All right, so I'll just set that over there and set this over here and grab up my plate, and let's get to tasting the pot roast, because after all, that's the most important thing. How does it taste? All right, so let me get a little chunk of meat here. It's definitely tender. Get a little chunk of carrot. See, it might fall apart if I go in there. No, oh, just won't stick on there. Good deal. Definitely that mushroom. That mushroom is calling my name. An onion. And how about I even taste a garlic? And a potato, which I will not eat that whole potato, but I will put it here and cut it. Perfect. It held its shape, but it is nice and soft. So that's good. All right, let's do a little bit of gravy. You know what? Let me taste the meat and stuff without the gravy so I can really tell you, what is the flavor of the meat and everything. So first of all, a pot roast, it should just kind of fall apart. Look at that. Look at that. Oh my gosh, that's perfect. All right, let's see what it tastes like. Wow. That's good. Really good. And the carrot, let's see. How soft is it? It's good. Wow, that's impressive. It really actually has a nice texture to it. Yum. All right, garlic. Oh my goodness. When you cook garlic for a long time, it really becomes a very mild flavor. It's delicious. The onions are good. They're softer than I usually like, but that's okay. All right, little potato. Super delicious. Good texture on the potato. And let's cut this little mushroom in half. Oh, see, that's amazing to me. Absolutely amazing that the mushroom is still like nice and firm. Oh, I love pressure cooking with mushrooms. All right, let's pour a little gravy on. Whoop, that was a lot of gravy. All right, let's give it a taste with the gravy. Wow. That's really good. Yummy. Now, of course, you could add salt if you needed to, or pepper, or any other seasonings. But for me, it's pretty well seasoned. One last thing. This pot roast is not as tender as the one I made before, and the difference is where I got the meat from. The first time I got the meat from an actual butcher, it was just a better quality. So quality matters when you're picking out meat, so try to get the highest quality that you can afford and you'll have the best outcome.